Neerav, nice to see you again. I suppose the opening question from me is, what was the incident or circumstances that have led to the changes that we see today?
So I think part of it was on the club website. Effectively, the majority of Pacific Media Group shares were actually owned by investors below them, and there was a nominee agreement in place for 4 years. That agreement expired, and the shareholders voted as a block to effect the current changes that you see in the board today.
Had it come about because of the disagreements, perfect timing then, between and amongst the shareholders at the top of the football club?
So there were definitely disagreements at the board level, but this was in the works for a little bit for sure. And then obviously there was some time building relationships, convincing everyone around the direction for the club going forward. And so like I said, the agreement expired after 4 years, and then it took some time for this to happen towards the end of the season.
I know a lot has been made about the fact that Chenley and Paul Conway don't have the day-to-day power that maybe they did, but they retain a shareholding, so presumably that means they hold some power still at the football club.
Well, it depends. They have all the rights associated with shares as it would be in any company, but at a board level, at the football club, neither of them are on the board, and the decision-making at the football club happens at the board level, and then obviously Khaled, Rob, Andy, people on ground.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting at in layman's terms is, can they stick their oar in at the worst possible moment then as shareholders?
No, the board takes the decisions.
Right. I think what a lot of what's been said and happened, a lot of Barnsley fans have warmed to. How much do you hope to build on that early positivity?
I mean, I've been saying this a lot since we came in, but judge us by our actions. I think some things will be apparent straight away, some things will take some time before you can see the changes. But we would like to build on that. Obviously, we'd like to see a full stadium. We'd like to see fans back next season. And slowly, we need to sort of give them reason to come back.
I've seen it mentioned about whether you might buy Chenley's shareholding. Have you had those talks yet?
No, I think, honestly, Chen needs to be a seller. I don't know if he is or not, so it's not something we've discussed. Maybe you can ask him the next time he's here for a press conference.
Well, we'd like to. I mean, from what you gather, would he be receptive to that?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't have any idea. And at this point, we don't. If the shareholding stays as the board stays as it is, the board will stay as it is.
You mentioned at the fans forum on Friday about the £1 million investment. Can you outline in a bit more detail what that's going to be used for?
So it's going to be used for everything that typically revenue coming into the club is used for. So paying wages, recruiting players over the summer, just the general running costs of the club. How
concerned are you about the shortfall, which we've discussed, haven't we, Carl? We discussed it with you, the £7 or £8 million difference essentially between being a championship club and a League One club.
No, very concerned, obviously. I mean, there's a financial hit, there's no way to get around that, no way to sugarcoat that. We will, as I said at the fans forum as well, if there's a further need for capital, the board will make the call and see if we need to put it in. And then also, I don't want to really hide from the fact that we are going to have to sell players to bridge the shortfall.
Do you expect what can usually be termed in the media as a fire sale then? Lots of players?
No, so part of the reason for putting the money in this early was to make sure that we didn't have to sell a player at the first offer that came in. If we get a reasonable offer for a player that we think matches the valuation, we will sell. But equally, if we don't get one, we will keep the player, even if it means running down the contract and having them go for free.
Khaled, can I bring you in at this stage so we can perhaps hear from everybody today? You are clearly as well in the midst of trying to find a new manager. Can you update us to where that process is at?
Yes, I think we're down to final 5 candidates. The process has been going on for some time because we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence, and we want the person to be in place no later than June 13th or in and around when the pre-season starts.
Right. And are all of those managers currently employed in England? Or have worked in England and maybe their career hasn't taken them somewhere else?
Yes.
What's brought about that shift? Because historically Barnsley have sought managers in other leagues.
We did the same this time around in terms of the same search that we did in winter. Some of the foreign ones that we spoke about or were interested in couldn't qualify because of Brexit. Some didn't have interest, and ultimately we just continue to follow the process to get the best possible manager we can, disregarding if he's British or non-British.
Michael Duff's name has been out there for some time. Is he still a candidate?
He's a person we've spoken to, yes.
Right. And another name that's done the round, which is particularly pertinent locally, is Paul Cook. Is he a person of interest?
I have not spoken to Paul Cook.
Right, okay. And Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, let's work through the list. He was a name that was mentioned too as well. Is he a person?
I've spoken to Jimmy, yeah.
Right, and is he still involved, if you like, of the 5 or 6 shortlisted candidates?
Still speaking to Jimmy and Duff.
Right, okay. So you would hope then prior to pre-season that everything gets sorted out. Did the work start on the next manager? Because it's been, what, 5 weeks essentially since the curtain closed on Poya Ashbagi's time here. Did that work start straight away? Because I think some fans are just getting frustrated by the delay.
In my opinion, there's no real delay because there's a due diligence, there's contractual situations, and what we said about already when we were doing the initial recruitment, the process in place, it's going to be similar to players. We do the recruitment and keep an eye for managers all the time. But then there's the ability of when you can talk to them, are you allowed to talk to them, are they interested, not interested. There's never is a clear process that one manager leaves and you can hire the next one the other day. So it's been, I would say it's a continuous search for who the manager can be.
Just on potential for player departures, is there any registered interest in any of the stars? Look, Hellick, Styles, you know the list of names I could rattle off.
We've received some official bids, but none that we've accepted.
Right. Okay. Are they from championship clubs then, or further afield?
Variation.
Right. Okay. I mean, is it? I realise we've just had we're not going to see a fire sale at Barnsley, but is it kind of what you were expecting? I suppose is a loose question. Are the names that you more automatically might anticipate have interest have got that?
I think so, yeah. The market usually speaks for itself. Players do well, they usually get an opportunity. Players don't do well, usually the opportunity isn't there.
Are you just to get everything sorted out? I mean, what's the kind of plan? Obviously, if nobody comes in with an acceptable bid, it ain't gonna. But are you hoping their futures get sorted out relatively quickly, so that you know where you stand at the other side of things, so that you know what money you're playing with to bring incomings?
I think, with the very positive injection of capital from the owners, which is well appreciated, give us a bit of time. But it's a balance. We want the manager and the players in by pre-season, but there's always going to be room for players coming in the last day of the transfer window, somebody leaving at the last day of transfer window. I mean, the window's open for that set of time for a reason.
Cine, if I may, can I bring you into this conversation? What does it mean to you to have what seems to be at least a more sort of prominent role within the directorship and the future of the football club? From the outside, at least.
Yeah, I'm just happy to help, really, because I never disappeared even after Patrick's death. So historically, all the time I spent at the club with him, plus without him, I'm still here.
It must still be quite emotional then to be part of all of this.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to you then that you're going to be a significant part of what goes on going forward? Well, hopefully success, clearly, on the field, but, potentially part of all that going forward.
Yeah, I just want to get back to the club we were. It's as simple as that for me. And, I've got people around me now who I feel we can do it.
Can I ask then, sort of bluntly and pointedly, how dysfunctional did you feel it became then before the changes?
Well, for me personally, obviously, it was hard. Yeah.
So it's been quite a sweep of positivity then for you this summer then?
Yeah, for sure.
And when you're in the midst of something that clearly means a lot to you, when you see it being, I realise I use the word dysfunctional rather than yourself, that must hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do feel, we've got staff at this club that have stayed throughout it all. We've now got people with enthusiasm again, so I can only see that we can get better.
You just see a brighter future ahead.
And it may not happen straight away on the pitch. It may not, but I think behind the scenes we've got things in place that hopefully will lead us there.
Right. Can you elaborate on that?
No.
Well, you can. You maybe don't want to. I suppose I was going to ask today, and I'll sort of broaden this out to everybody. Neerav, I can bring you in. Clearly, right now we're talking about the next manager and fans and all that. But well, Khaled and I, and with the media, we've spoken about off-the-field developments too as well. So how much of it is it part of the plan for TLC on the stadium, working on things within the town centre? This is part of what you want to achieve here now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, look, we've been talking to the council even before the board change happened, but I think, and Khaled might be well placed to answer this, but we want to have a good relationship with the council, talk to them, like you said, both about the stadium, but also the town centre, sort of making Oakwell a venue for things more than just match days. And we're obviously looking to talk to them about extending the lease. We don't want to leave the stadium, I can put that out there. Obviously, we will need to negotiate with the council and understand how it works for both parties, but the intention at least is to stay on at Oakwell. Moving away would not be part of the plan.
Is there, and I sort of say this loosely, I mean, is there an intention to take full control of the stadium then? And do you think the council will be receptive to that?
I think the current plan is to look at our lease and see if we can sign a longer term lease with the council around that.
I suppose then that kind of follows on. Jean, I appreciate this is particularly pertinent for you, but all of you really, Khaled, come in. Is this court case, is this disagreement ongoing? What's happening?
It's ongoing, so I can't really discuss it.
Sure. This is a very leading question to a point, but do we have an idea when this might come to a conclusion? Shaking her head. No.
I can't really discuss anything to do with it.
I wish we could give a bit more information,
Yeah,
but whenever things end, I'm sure we can have more of a conversation on that.
That's me done. Thank you.
Just generally, you mentioned that there were sort of disagreements. I mean, can you go into a bit more detail about what it was that you were sort of unhappy with the way the club was being run before these changes?
I mean, I think there's a lot of different things, and most of it actually pretty apparent to fans, people on the outside as well, in terms of the direction we saw the club going into. And also, I think a lot of things around player transfers, around the culture of the club. I think there was a lot of things we disagreed with, and that's where the disagreement stemmed from.
What changes might fans then see sort of in the next few weeks and months straight away from these board changes?
So I think in terms of fan experience, Andy might be best placed to answer that, but we're obviously looking at that front and centre. We also are looking at things in the player side in terms of the footballing side. I've said this a few times in the fans forum and the statement online, but we want to make sure that football is a priority of this football club, nothing else. And we want the fan experience to be extremely good. So we want tons of things in terms of fan zone, catering, experience at match days. There's a lot of things we can improve on, we're going to look to improve on. But a larger picture thing, I think the focus will be on the football.
Because previously one of the big complaints from fans, and any of you can answer this, is that it's felt like sometimes it's almost like, especially last season, maybe a sort of factory for developing players and selling them on rather than actually getting a team that's balanced and good on the pitch. Is that a fair description, or will it change from that?
I mean, going forward, certainly the idea is to win football games, nothing more, nothing less. So, and I think the question we've got roughly around this is, will it only be young players? No, there's going to be a blend of experience and younger players. But I'm sure you can appreciate, and fans can appreciate, that it's hard to find that good experienced player who wants to come to Barnsley, fits within the wage constraints, etc.
You mentioned the £1 million invested. Was that just from the new board, or did it involve the shareholders in Paul Conway and Shenley as well?
Everyone has equal right to participate in that.
Right, okay. And there's been an issue of this £750,000. You're all here. Can you offer an explanation of why that appeared in the accounts from the club to the Cryne family rather than from the initial buyers of the club?
Yeah, so the initial agreement was that the payment could be made either by the Hong Kong Holdco or by the football club. So that was always the understanding that could have come out of either one.
Okay, and another thing, maybe to bring Jean in, something that was previously mentioned was that the stadium couldn't be bought because there couldn't be clean title, or there was another claim on the ground. Can you offer a response to that?
Not really.
Right, okay.
I mean, whatever the situation is, you know it, the fans know it. It's out there.
But you would dispute that there was something blocking, from a third party that has a claim to the ground.
I would dispute that it affected anything. Yeah.
Okay, and for you, Jean, to obviously massive connection for the club going back years. I mean, you know the fans. What do you think needs to be be done in the next few months and weeks to get them back on
I
side.
just really hope that they'll trust in what we're trying to do, and we can't promise that it will automatically, everything will be put right. As I said earlier, we've got a lot of good people at this club that have stayed with the club, and I've got Neerav here, and he's desperate to see things right. So you can only hope with all that in the mix. We will try and get there.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously it was a big decision for Patrick to sell the club to anyone, do you think that what he was sort of sold a vision of it at that point just did it compare to what actually happened?
No, because it's like anybody who goes for an interview. You're going to give a good interview, aren't you? I know that the night that it was signed over to the new people, Patrick were in tears. So
No, I completely understand. Yeah. And just in terms of in general that the club, people are obviously with the relegation and COVID before costing money. I think fans are probably a bit worried about the general financial future. Obviously, good news that you've put that money in. Can you just give a picture of the finances in general going forward? Because I mean, some will sort of worry about what will happen in the future.
Yeah, no, like I said, look, relegation is hard on any club. There's always a financial hit with that. I think it's doubly hard on us because there's no secret of it. We've taken a huge hit in revenue, and wages obviously don't come down proportionally. But I guess to reassure fans, what I can say is we've made a capital call for £1 million, and if money is needed further down this summer, we will make another capital call, and shareholders will be asked to contribute again.
Great. And then just finally for me on the maybe Khaled or Neerav can answer this on the obviously £7 or £8 million and the selling players. I mean, it's a market that's still probably recovering from COVID a bit. Maybe there isn't the big money that was being spent a couple of years ago before all of that happened. Is it realistic to think that maybe 2 or 3 or 4 players could be sold and make up that £8 million, or is that not the way you're looking at it? What do you think?
You want to take it?
Yeah. Look, I think good players always add in value. The transfer window is just about to open, so I think we'll see what comes in and what doesn't come in. Certain players have expiring contract, 1 year left, 2 years left. There's several factors that will dictate the price. It will dictate if we think we should sell them or not, and our valuation. So I think we'll wait and see.
Thank you.
Obviously, Aldwell's sacrosanct. I think Eugene as well. Moving forward, it's something that you can surely never envisage as a board. I mean, it's obviously massively emotional to the supporters.
Sorry, is that Director Gene or me?
Well, both of you really, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I completely understand the connection supporters have with Oakwell. I think Gene probably understands it far more than I do. But like I said, it's nothing that we even want to contemplate. We want to work with the council and try and keep Barnsley Football Club at Oakwell. It's home.
Have you had some positive conversations with them? I think it's...
Yeah, cool.
I mean, one of the first meetings I had when I came at the club 8 months ago was to sit down with Sir Stephen Shawkat. And already at that point talked about that the intention is not to leave. We've since hired an independent consultant to support us. We've had workshops with the council. We had Dan Jarvis, and it's all been going in a very positive direction. Just last week we had another meeting to talk about the future and cooperation between the council and the club, because this is not just about the lease. It's about the cooperation with the police, it's about the event, it's what are we gonna not just do the next season, but hopefully 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Yeah.
And it's so far everything has been positive.
Can you just clarify the sort of percentage of ownership of the sort of the club now?
Sure. So, Gene, you can talk for yourself. For myself, I own 21.25%.
Yeah.
The investors from New York own 20%.
And 20%.
And the rest of it is Paul and Chien.
So I mean, it's not a takeover. It's going to be a totally different way of running the club, and you're going to see a lot of changes. That's what.
I'd like to hope so. I mean, some of them will be apparent straight away. Some of them, like I said, will take time to reflect. But I think it's not that much of a change from what Barnsley Football Club are used to. I think take it back to the community, take it back to being a local club, and focus on the football. That's not really that hard.
Yeah. You must be able to understand the angst of the supporters, Jean. You
I do,
support
yeah.
yourself.
I've got it myself.
It's how tough is this sort of last few years?
It's been very tough. Yeah, personally, but also what I've seen on, you know, what's happened on the pitch. Nobody wants this to happen, but it has.
Yeah.
And I just, like I keep saying, you know, hopefully with the people we've got around us now, we can do something.
Yeah.
Can make decisions.
Perhaps one for yourself, Khaled. Will the new appointment, will it be a manager or head coach?
A head coach.
A head coach, yeah. So it will still be within the same remit that previous incumbents have had.
Yeah, so that's essentially, call it manager, head coach, gaffer. Essentially what we want to build is a stability on the field as well. So when a manager, coach comes in, when they leave, that it doesn't all disrupt everything. So the structure of Barnsley, or call it the Barnsley way, has to create stability. So we're looking at all how do we create, you know, the leadership group, what each role means for the sports science, the medicine, so that when a person comes and goes, it doesn't disrupt the entire club. Because if you look at the past, you know, whether it's Poya, Shop, Val, Stuber, Stendal, a lot of coaches, managers, gaffers have been coming and going. And to create that stability for long-term success, certain parameters of kind of the frame have to be club driven. You can call it the manager, the head coach. The person that comes in is responsible to pick the team and make us win games and lead the practice.
In terms of, you mentioned you want to go for a different profile of player, some more experience. Is there a figure of, you know, the number of experienced players you're looking to bring in?
I think, you know, I even mentioned it in one of my earlier interviews or fan forums. You know, we're only gonna sign players 23 and younger. Look, the vision is that way because they're usually less injury prone, they're cheaper, there is resale value, but they can also adapt and play the press and counter press much more efficiently. We as a board are discussing, we want to be one of the youngest teams in England and Europe, so our average age, but instead of talking about specific signings that are 23 or younger, we're going to look at the squad balance itself. So there is room for a 30-year-old, there is room for an 18-year-old, but the actual squad balance has to be the right, so we're the most competitive that we can be on the pitch to win games. But again, you know, it's easy to just say experience. If you don't find the right character and experience, it can be more negative than positive. But no, we're even now looking at speaking to players that are 27, 29, as much as we are speaking to players that are 20, 22, 24.
So it's fair to say that there's no figure in mind then, but you're obviously open-minded as far as this.
Yeah,
you know,
as
this
long as the
figure goes.
squad balance and the average age, those are kind of the parameters we want to talk about.
Yeah, Neerav, perhaps one for yourself. Where do you feel things went wrong last season? Where did it start to unravel from the season before?
Yeah.
And subsequently, I'm sure there's been some soul searching and some lessons learned as well.
Look, I think some of the things were obvious in the football side. We lost our captain in a free transfer, we lost the manager, so I think obviously it was going to be hard to replicate what happened the season before. But also, as you've seen top down, there was issues with the culture at the club. I think at a board level, obviously, it was apparent that there was disagreements. So I think all that percolates at all levels of the club, and eventually you see the product on the pitch suffer. So I think there was a lot of reasons. I can't really pinpoint one of them, but I think we've got a list of them, and we're going to try and work through those to make sure that that doesn't get replicated this season.
Will you have to sell to buy?
Yes. I mean, we're in financials, and one word, yes, but it doesn't necessarily have to follow in that order. Like I said, so we put the capital in right now, so we don't need to sell at the first offer that comes in. But I'm going to make no bones about it, there will be a few players that have to be sold. And I don't think that's unique to Barnsley, right? That's every single club, especially clubs that get relegated.
Yeah, that's totally fair enough.
Yeah.
But will you, so just to confirm, will players have to leave before players can come in, or is there a bit of grace in the budget to bring a few in first?
I think there's grace to bring a few in first, but obviously it's not going to be multi-million pound purchase. There might be a few free transfers, a few people who come in for low fees, and then we'll have a sense of what a financial budget is closer to the end of the window.
You mentioned fees, so there's going to be a transfer budget for the new head coach.
I mean, there is a transfer budget, but again, it depends, like you said, on outgoings as well. So it's fluid, but we are going to look at bringing players in, and we need to strengthen the squad. And the idea is to get out of League One at the first opportunity.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah.
I suppose, Khaled, you might be a better place to answer this. You've been more involved in the football side of things. Where do you think you're going to be pitching budget-wise next season? Because there's some big clubs in League One as well. Barnsley, whatever metric you want to use, they're not going to be the biggest club by many people's measurements. So where do you anticipate your budget is going to be?
I think whether it's budget or players, we want to compete to be one of the teams fighting for promotion and playoff. That specific number I think will be more evident once the transfer window and everything closes. But like Neerav said, it's fluid. There's balance. We have an idea of how we want to balance that number to get the best possible squad.
Have any players specifically made transfer requests?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And yes meaning certain players have been here for a long time, and maybe part of the development is time to leave. But it's also based from us. And the reason I say yes and no, it's a mutual dialogue between two parties.
Are you in a position to tell us who those people are?
At this point, in terms of the discussion we've had, we keep that between us.
Herbie Kane, I know this is slightly off topic. There was a comment from the Oxford boss where he was on loan last season that he picked up a bad injury. How bad is that? Will he be fit for the start of the season? Can you give us a bit more detail?
So yeah, he did have an injury. It's on a month-to-month basis. We're hopeful that he should be back at some point this summer.
The summer, yeah. And just final one, Martin Devaney presumably just goes back to his old post.
We're reviewing the entire structure at the club. I don't know if already in January we made a bit of a change where we're trying to bridge the gap between the academy and the first team. So we brought in Devaney into the first team squad. We then brought Tom Harbin in, and we're along with the Bobby and the board and myself, we're looking on how to create the best possible working environment within. So nothing has been decided on Martin.
Yeah, just a final piece of housekeeping. I think you mentioned for the new head coach, 13th of June was the date you gave, or the start of pre-season. When does pre-season start?
20th.
The 20th of June,
Yeah.
Thank you. That's everything, cheers.
I just want to ask, obviously we know the situation with the West Ham last season, Khaled. What's the thought around avoiding a similar situation with that? Because obviously we all know it's old and we're going to need some work at some point.
I think it's gonna do the right reviews or that we need to do. Keep a good dialogue with the council, which we did at that point as well. At this point, there is no thought of closing it, and anything we want to do in and around an Oakwall hopefully is looking also at the broader perspective.
So you're confident it'll be open for next season, should be fine as well?
As per the report so far, yes.
Yeah. In terms of manager recruitment, presumably we're happy to pay compensation based on the conversations with Alderstad if we'd need to for a manager?
It depends what we ended up choosing, so we'll see.
Okay. In terms of recruiting a head coach, head coach, obviously things didn't work out with Poya, and I know you're someone who always talks about learning, developing different things. Is there anything you're doing differently in terms of recruitment this time to reflect on that, or could you shine any light on the reasons you feel things didn't work out, Poya?
I think, going back to the process, we create a top list. We start at the top. We ask, certain want to come, certain don't want to come, certain we can afford, etc., etc. And then whoever we choose, we do support because there's a process behind it. It's not a person picked because of an agent or someone we know. We did the similar thing now. What I can tell you, there's 3 buckets. One is the kind of very experienced. One is the up and coming. That maybe not necessarily have a lot of managerial experience, and the other one is what I called solid option that has some seasons behind them, and we've interviewed and spoken to all variation, which hopefully will then lead us to the one that we think is the best fit. I also think it's very important, we also want a manager that wants to come to Barnsley, and during the process someone might be enticed and excited about the job, but then you find out that they don't really want to be here. So then that's also have to be the right fit.
I was just going to ask, do you think that was the case with Poyer in the end? There was some reports out that he said that he planned to leave anyway, and he mentioned it in March. I think it was in the Swedish media.
I think when we hired Poya, we went through the process, and there's always that option to extend or not and talk about the next season, but our goal was to just look at first and foremost till the season's over, and the discussion was ongoing. It wasn't just with Poya, it was with the assistants, it was with the board, what do we want, and ultimately we then decided to part ways because that was best for all parties.
Okay. Jean, just one question for you. When this was announced, met with lots of Barnsley fans sending messages saying how happy they were to see your name in the role. I just wondered what that means to you to know that.
Well, a lot really, but you know, I'm partly happy to do it just because of what Patrick did. Really, that's it.
Anything else?
Philip, can I just check how many candidates have applied for the job or were considered ultimately for the current vacancy?
I cannot give you the exact number. I can tell you there's 3 ways of it: references, agents putting names forward, and our own potential search of we went and approached it and managers. And then you put everything in, you rank them in terms of data, the way we want to play, experience, some of the parameters, and then you start doing the interviews and the list gets clearer and clearer.
So how many candidates have you interviewed then and spoken to?
Feels like that's the only thing I've been doing the last 5 weeks. It's been a long list.
Yeah.
A long list.
Final one, Neerav. Could anyone have kept Barnsley up last season?
You'll never know the counterfactual, honestly. So it was a tough season, and there's a lot of things apart from just the manager. So I don't want to pin it down to one reason. We'll never know. Let's look forward.
Cheers.
Wonderful. All good?
Cool.
I mean, I'm here representing the Sports Trust today, so first of all, I can personally say it's very welcome to see Jean involved on the board. Patrick always used the phrase reluctant custodian.
Yeah.
Would you say that's kind of your position as well in terms of you stepping up into a board role now?
Yeah, I suppose it is, but I feel I've got to do it really. Want to do it. Got to do it.
And also a question in terms of the equity issue. We've said that everybody has the right to take up Parekh their shareholding.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a potential, should Conway and Shenley not want to take that ultimately that could lead to a dilution of their shareholdings if they choose not to take up those options?
If any shareholder doesn't take up their right to participate, they will be diluted because the vast majority of shareholders will participate from the sense we're getting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.